Dragonmancer is pretty broken, right? But wouldn't it be nice to get your hands on a Dragonmancer emblem more often? Well, look no further, because today's video will explain how to use the Tome of Traits to get it for sure. If you have no idea what the Tome of Traits is, in short, it is a consumable that you can get with augments or gold orbs from PvE rounds. Selling it will give you a selection of 4 emblems. These emblems are powerful items you put on your unit to give them a bonus trait. The selection of those 4 emblems is not random, and it has to do with the units you place on your board. This is something within the player's control, so it allows us to influence the outcome. But you can't just place any units you want in the planning phase, because the selection is based on the previous round, both PvP and PvE. You will have to feel the specific board at least once, and you should only use the tome after the next round has started. The tome outcomes can either be random or tailored. Tailored means that the emblem is a trait that you're currently running on your board, and therefore it is likely that you can make use of it. The more traits you run on your board, the more tailored emblems the game will give you. Here is the rundown for the amount of traits you need to have for a tailored emblem. With 0 to 5 traits on your board, all of your emblems will be random. But once you start to have 6 or 7 traits, one of them ends up being tailored while the rest will remain random. At 8 or 9 traits, you will now have 2 tailored emblems and only half of them will be random. At 10 or 11, 3 of them will be tailored, and if you're running 12 or more, then all of them will be tailored, none of them will be random. Something I do want to clarify right away, this is not about activated traits. All that matters is that the trait appears on the left side of your screen, and that's all that you need for it to be taken into consideration. If you choose the tome as your first augment, you as a player have a decision to make. One option is to use it right away. You just take your chances on the random emblem and give yourself an item advantage and a potential direction for your game. The second option is to manipulate it, putting a specific combination of units on the board to give yourself a high chance of receiving a specific emblem. This usually means waiting for those specific units until you find a proper setup. Let's take a look at an example to help you understand. Here we have an average board for stage 2-1. We have a Guardian frontline with Nasus and Leona, together with a Swiftshot backline with Ezreal and Twitch. With this board we currently have a total of 6 traits. If we would pop the tome in stage 2-2, one of the emblems is guaranteed to be either Guardian, Swiftshot, Guild, Mirage, Shimmer Scale or Tempest. The other 3 are randomly selected from all the possible emblems in the game. It is possible in this scenario to receive both a Guardian and a Mirage emblem, but this just means that out of the 3 random selections, one of them ended up being a trait you were running. Now with this finally out of the way, let's take a look on how to manipulate the outcomes. In our previous example, we would have a 16.6% chance to receive one of our traits, and we want to get this number higher. We can achieve this by using units with traits that have no emblems. While there are plenty of emblems in the game, there are lots of traits that don't have one, because they just end up giving unique effects for legendary units, or they ended up being so powerful, Riot had to remove them. The current list for traits with no emblems includes Astral, Ragewing, Whisper, Shapeshifter, Prodigy, Dragon, Spell Thief, Starcaller, Bard, and Monolith. A lot of them are based on tier 5 units, which means it's unlikely you will ever come across them when trying to manipulate the tome. So I would personally advise you to just ignore them for the most part. The main idea behind manipulating the tome is to reach the threshold for tailored emblems, but you want to achieve this with units that aren't a viable option for the outcome. In theory, if you could have 5 non-viable traits together with 1 viable, you would be able to force a specific emblem. And while this setup obviously doesn't exist, we do have something very close to it. The core unit for every setup that includes tome manipulation is Nidalee. With Astral and Shapeshifter, she will add 2 traits without contesting anything. This just makes her the perfect unit. Other Astral units like Skana, Vladimir, Lux and Varus are all good choices as well, since they will only end up adding their classes as a trait. Next up we have the Ragewing units, Senna, Set and Rakan, and I guess you can also mention Xayah and Hecarim. Ragewing does not exist as an emblem anymore, but Cannoneer, Dragonmancer and Guardian do. Set is extremely valuable since he will add 2 traits, and one of them doesn't exist, and the other one is a Dragonmancer emblem, which, is one of the best emblems in the meta right now. Something that changed from the previous set is that Zyra and Sylas are now a viable option, since Riot ended up removing the Whisper emblem. So Zyra will end up adding Evoker, and Silas will end up adding Bruiser or Mage to your contested trait list. Then we have Nomsy and Zippy. If you're looking for a guild emblem, Zippy is a pretty good choice, since Dragon is considered a trait, but obviously doesn't have an emblem. Nomsy is usually the better choice if you're looking to manipulate, however. She has an additional trait with Prodigy and has just absolutely great combinations with her traits depending on the game. Mage, for example, can be combined with Lux. Cannoneer can be combined with Senna, and Evoker, which is probably the best one, can be combined with Zyra just to limit the amount of possible traits. With all of this in mind, let's create some useful setups. The first one is Set, Nidalee, and Zyra. This is a very basic setup for stage 2. You kinda do need to get the Zyra, but it's usually not that difficult. In this setup, 4 of your traits aren't viable, so you created a scenario with a 50% chance for a Dragonmancer and a 50% chance for an Evoker emblem. For the next example, it's pretty much the same, but maybe you're not a fan of Evoker. So instead of adding Zyra, we are just going to add any unit into the setup that has 2 useful traits. Maybe you want to add a Rengar to get a choice between Dragonmancer, Darkflight, and an Assassin emblem. Or perhaps in your game you have an interesting Mirage, so adding Nunu opens up Mirage and Kaval. Creating a choice between 3 useful emblems will usually put you in a winning position. As for our third setup, this is something very specific. Here we are running Set, Nidalee, Zyra, and the Evoker Nomsy. It's kind of rare, but I still wanted to mention it, because instead of 1 tailored emblem, here we're going for 2. Honestly, it's pretty rare for Riot to allow a scenario like this, but you will be able to guarantee both the Dragonmancer and the Evoker emblem to show up with a 100% chance. So this is definitely your go-to setup if you're looking to force a Dragonmancer emblem. And the last setup we're going to take a look at has to do with Senna, Nidalee, and a Cannoneer Nomsy. It is similar to the previous example that we looked at, where we just create a situation where you can add any unit you want, and then for this setup, the game will choose between Cannoneer and the traits you ended up adding. As an example, if we add Yone, out of Cannoneer, Mirage, and Warrior, 2 of them will be chosen. And this is definitely a good spot to be in. Now for you as a player, I would recommend that you don't try to memorize setups, but instead pay attention to units in your shop that don't have an emblem and collect them for your setup. This way it's much easier for you to pop the tome early with still pretty good chances instead of trying to wait for the perfect one and have your tome just collect dust on your bench. Now if you are in a losing streak, it won't matter as much if you place a super weird combination of units for the tome and as an end result will take a lot of damage. But if you want to stay healthy, then I would recommend that you make use of the PvE rounds. It's pretty difficult to lose them, and all you have to do is just pop the tome at the beginning of the next stage, and you can freely fish for all the emblems that you were looking for. I believe that was everything on my side. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. Other than that, I hope you learned something, and see you next time.